Hello, I'm Chris Schnee, and I'm playing a tabletop role-playing game called Worlds Without Number. I've already done a video that covers the first session of this game as I begin to learn the rules and work through a randomly generated adventure. My character is Shayl, who is an elementalist wizard specializing in earth-related magic, and currently only at level 1, which makes her fairly weak, but I'm also using the heroic rules, or a version of them anyway, which are meant to make solo characters viable. This character sheet shows that she is an artisan by trade, able to do stonework as an ordinary mason, and she has some basic magic skill, including 3 points of effort, which are used to fuel certain abilities, such as an elemental blast, basically once per scene, as well as 1 spell per day, the coolest to which so far is Elemental Favor, something that is basically an earth-shaping power. Shayl was trained by a hermit, and in session 1, the hermit told her to go retrieve a certain stone, which was found in a ruin, which had been opened up by a recent earthquake. So, Shayl hired a porter, a wilderness guide, and a swordsman to accompany her to the dungeon, and explored the place, which seemed to be an old abandoned military base. In there, she was able to find this mystic stone without really having any idea what it was, along with some miscellaneous loot, including a book and some coins. So she has come back to town to try to sell the loot and find out what's going on and come back to talk to the hermit. She has returned to the town, which I've named Haddle's Ford, and is worn out. She lives alone in her own shop because gaining magic was a good way to make money as a mason and do some ordinary stonework and get prosperous enough to have a small shop. Her skill at actual construction is only above average, but hey, when you can create a pile of stone bricks or just repair a wall by magic once per day, that's a good way to make some money. The first order of business after getting back is to catch up on work, but within a day or two of that, she faces the effects of the last quest. Word must be spreading about that revealed ruin and the earthquake. So she goes looking for a scholar who might be able to answer some questions. I rolled a connect roll to try to find people who know things, and I rolled well on that, a 9, so I said, yeah, okay, she knows somebody, an academic, named, and pick a random name, Kuna. He lives chiefly in an area near the city's stinking tannery, so her eyes water as she approaches this place. His home is decorated with bits of damaged old armor and books. That was randomly generated. And I asked, does she recognize any of this armor? Answer, yes. In fact, this guy has bought some of the armor that was brought back by the porter and wizard and wilderness guide last time. And he's been wanting to speak with Shayl about what she found over there. So she shows him this book that she found in the ruin, along with a container of incense, but doesn't yet explain this jewel or stone that she found. She tries to persuade the academic guy to take the incense as a partial payment for research into the book. I made a trade roll, but Shayl isn't actually any good at trade, so I didn't roll very well. He says, no, the incense might be an antique, but it doesn't interest him at all. So Shayl pays 200 silver coins for the privilege of getting this thing identified, this book. And that is a lot of money. Even so, she found a lot in the ruins, and she has 490 coins left. And she leaves in the book for now. She tries to argue for a discount because of telling the story of what was over there in the ruins, but I got a no to that question, so no discount. Shayl goes to the market next, trying to sell this incense. She's going for adventurer prices, not full value that a merchant might be able to get, and the rules suggest that the prices it's using are typically what an adventurer could get by fencing legitimately acquired goods. And I made a trade roll to see how well that went, and said, no, again, she's not very good at trade. So I rolled for what the theoretical adventurer price of this is, and then gave her only 60% of that for the bad roll. That still worked out to 240 silver pieces, so a good payday compared to spending 200 for the book identification. What she naively doesn't consider is that selling this mysterious container of incense and getting the book identified and knowing that people have sold the armor causes word to spread about this ruin, so it's only a matter of time before more people go to investigate. So at this point, I was looking for some kind of social or investigation challenge before getting back into any direct ruin exploration or the like. So I used the Worlds Without Number tables to try to roll up a court scenario, trying to find out more about who the rulers are and what problems they might have and how they might interact with Shayl. Rough ideas that the dice gave me was an NPC has a reason to seek the PC out, wants more than the PC can give, is in serious debt, is uncharitable and irritated, wants something hushed up. Someone wants to make a better offer. I wanted to know more about what this court is like, and I got 2 tags saying rival dreams and overextended group with paralysis in the court. Some random NPCs within this court. I got an ornamental spouse and a court mage. And what was the source of power for each of these people? Well, the ornamental spouse, quote, provides intimate services to an important person, and the court mage provides intimate services to an important person. Okay, so there's a ruler who apparently has 2 lovers, one of them the actual spouse, and the other one an attractive sorceress, and they're both trying to get his attention. I also got something saying that someone got involved with a criminal organization and a reckless member has incurred a group's anger. So I have the beginnings of a court structure here where there's conflict between 2 powerful women vying for the attention of this king who is caught between them, and they both want something. I drew a card using a bell curve system to try to decide how important this city is to the overall kingdom. I got a 2 on a 1 to 10 scale, so this is actually a fairly minor town. I'm calling the ruler a baron. And I'm thinking one of these 2 court factions is eager to exploit these new ruins and whatever lays beyond them. The other one is more focused on defense against some kind of ongoing military threat that's looming. Is the Baroness the one who cares about the ruins? I flipped a card and it said no, with some prompts that also says something about the undead. So maybe this military threat on the border is an undead thing? And that's what the Baroness cares about, versus the Sorceress, who sees this earthquake and ruin as an opportunity to advance the interests of the barony and not coincidentally prove that she is superior. She's the one who summoned Shayl. Because she's the court mage, she invites Shayl to a fine meal to discuss what she saw. Shayl doesn't dare refuse. This sorceress works in a dedicated building with cleverly arranged ventilation and a sylvan-looking dog drowsing in one corner. The lady herself is literally a shark dresser with an angular, bladed kind of outfit. And her office is strangely militaristic, maybe to give the impression that, yes, she does care about the safety of the kingdom as well. She has maps of the Steamlands, the area that is said to lie beyond the ruin. And she says, I want to hear more about this hermit. Shayl explains how they met. He once rescued her from bandits while traveling. I'm giving this court mage the name of Yang the Feathered, based on some prompts. Shayl wants to ask for magical advice, and she's here with the town's most prominent mage. I said this ought to be a fairly easy roll, but I actually rolled fairly badly on it, and not badly enough to say that she gave offense, but Liang is not terribly helpful right now and is more interested in getting Shayl to do things for her before revealing any magical secrets. Specifically, what does she want? She wants Shayl to make a second expedition into the ruins and go farther this time, bringing back evidence of valuable resources, and to stake a land claim by building a permanent shelter there. That ought to be easy with Shayl's abilities to shape stone, right? Legally, by being a subject of the Baron in this new territory and having a house there, that would mean that the house is part of the Baron's territory. Or at least the sorceress plans to make that argument, as a way of advancing her own power. She can't provide much direct help, but she can call in some favors to make sure that Shayl is well supplied and nobody's going to rob her shop while she's away. So, Shayl goes back to her shop, sweating, and figuring out how she's going to go on the second expedition, when there's a knock on the door. An agent of his lordship the Baron is there, commanding that she... And here I had to draw some more cards. The agent says, his lordship is aware that you're a wizard of some skill, and you are to seal off the ruins immediately. Strangely, neither court faction actually demanded that she turn over the loot she found. It seems that they were too busy fighting over their own things to try to take what she had. And the hirelings have been paid well enough they didn't blab too much about exactly what she found. So that's the good news. However, Shayl now has conflicting orders. Go down to the ruins and explore some more and build a house, and also seal them off so no one can get in. So Shayl thinks about this and realizes they're not technically conflicting, because she can do the house thing and then seal the ruins off on the way back, thus successfully following orders from both sides and then allowing the factions to fight it out among themselves about what they want from her next. The Baroness's messenger says that if there are people who have already gone through there, Shayl is to warn them to leave, but don't leave the place open for longer than it takes them to go. And the herald handed over a written letter that Shayl could show to anybody there saying, hey, go home, this place is off limits. Shayl is able to get the help of the Wilderness Survival Guide from last time, and decides to not bring a porter this time, because she's just bringing along survival gear and is not going to bother with masonry tools. Unfortunately, there's no time to actually go visit the hermit and drop off the stone. It's kind of an urgent problem. So Shayl hangs on to that for now without knowing what the thing is. Next scene. She sets off into the wilderness again. 3 days of travel, and the route is more familiar to her and the guy than last time. And there are no fighting men along, unfortunately. Because it's a familiar route, I'm going to ignore the first mishap if any is triggered. And I ignored one the first night when something bad would have happened, and that was the only bad roll I rolled on the wilderness travel. So Shayl and the guy managed to get back to the ruin without trouble. And at this point, I used the cards again, saying, "Are there signs of other travelers who've already passed this way?" "Yes," said the cards. "Several parties of them?" "Exceptional, no." That was odd. What would be exceptionally no to more than one? I said, "Okay, are there signs of a fight?" I gave it a 50-50 odds, and I got a yes there. "And how violent might this fight have been?" An 8 on a 1 to 10 scale. So the ranger picks up signs that a group of unknown people traveled this way just in the last day or two, i.e. after he and Shayl got back. And there was a scene of carnage here. 3 people are dead in the camp, likely killed in their sleep. And as far as the ranger can tell, no wild beast did this. This was a man that did this. And here are tracks going on from there from one person. And the ranger warned Shayl, "If we get in trouble, I'm not planning to fight whoever killed these 3. I suggest that you not fight either." They go on to the ruin entrance. Shayl asks the ranger about any insight on the last traveler, and here I rolled a 6, which is a sort of a bare minimum competence roll for the ranger. And he says, "Well, there was one traveler who got this far, not concealing his tracks. Boots, and you can see how he flailed around in this area looking for the exact entrance, and eventually found it. And besides that, I got an icon showing a ship. I wasn't sure how to interpret that. He says, the marks here show me that there was a pile of rope here, like the guy was unpacking and coiling it for use. He was prepared for travel and getting around a difficult environment. You mentioned a pit that you had to climb into, right? Maybe there's more climbing to do in there." Shayl thanks the guide and says, "Okay, I need to build a house on the side of this. I need to get through there and use my magic there to make it a credible one-person settlement. And I also need to deal with whoever this other person is who might be hostile. And with my magic, that's going to mean spending a couple of days there on the other side. Are you willing to come along?" And the ranger says, "No, again, I'm not being paid enough for this. I don't want to get caught up in the court squabbles. I can see that you're already up in it, and I don't want to be involved. I can wait here for a couple of days with the rest of your stuff here and try to catch some food while I'm at it." So Shayl was left on her own, and unfortunately she had no fighting men along this time, but hopefully it would be somewhat easier since she'd already cleared out the ruin. Given her orders, and the fact she'd only had 1 true spell per day, she was going to be cautious about how she used that, and tried to make sure there was no danger at first. Top priority was going to be the house building. So she set out into the ruins, and has a torch in one hand. It's up to her to protect herself. Had the stuck door been opened on that northeastern part of the ruin? I'd say no, nobody has disturbed it. There were boot prints, but Shayl wasn't sure that any of them were new, and the dust had been stirred by her own passage recently. She went down the improvised stairs that she had made with a spell last time, down into that lower level where there was some kind of goods transport area. So I used cards to decide what was down there, and got items suggesting absolutely no branching paths. It was a straight passage of some kind. Wasn't sure what else to make of the results there. So, long straight passage underground. Shayl realizes that this passage seems unnaturally smooth, as though it had been shaped by magic. Something that obviously interests her. She'd like to know exactly how that's done. I was trying to learn something else about this passage, since it seemed uninteresting so far, and I drew some cards about it and saw things like Reward Dormant Haven, Begin Hopeful Source, a Skull, Arcane Knowledge, an Arcane Weapon. So this was all random stuff that came up in the cards. I wanted to try to interpret that into something interesting. So I said there was something odd about the stonework in one section, and that mystic stone that she'd been carrying around began to glow and grow warm. So something secret was there. Shayl poked the stonework, and although she didn't have her full tool set along, she did have a hammer and chisel, just as a standard thing she carries around. Rather than flinging magic at it, she managed to tap some sections out of it and found that it was actually a very thin wall. I rolled very well on an artisan check. So it was little more than a thin plaster layer, and she gouged away enough to look through. What was there? I wasn't sure yet. I was thinking about the situation partly in terms of the game mechanics. The heroic rules say that you basically get one full class and a half class, and I had not yet given Shayl any half class. I was thinking healer mage, so she could be a full elementalist and a partial healer, and I was going to try to justify how that happens rather than just bam, suddenly you're a healer. So I drew some cards for ideas about what exactly is behind this thin wall, and considering the fact that it is behind a wall, it's been sealed off for some reason, I got cards and icons saying something about a monster and a portal and a mantis. So I said, okay, there's a shimmering portal of some kind and a giant praying mantis monster. Rawr. Good excuse for some combat. I'm handling this in a relatively simple way, treating it as mindlessly hostile this time. I'm going to use the stats for a large solitary predator, more dangerous than what we've seen before. I'm also going to have it spend its first action breaking free. Shayl is no fool and knows to yelp and hop back, turning tail to run away. The beast smashes its way free of the thin wall and runs after her, hissing. Shayl flings a weak magical blast at it. Mechanically, that's the Fray die. 1 point of damage. She also uses the Elemental Blast ability, which uses 1 point out of 3 effort per scene. And that's a real attack, but it has a chance of missing. Unfortunately, that misses. Second round is chasing her down this long tunnel underground. It can't quite catch up with her, but she can't gain ground on it either. So now I have her trying to kite the thing. I drew a card to say, is there going to be a spare turn where she can continue to do this and continue running away and keeping her distance? And I drew yes. Okay, she's in luck for that time. So she, again, flings an Elemental Blast for another point of effort, 2 out of 3. Miss. Rolled the Fray die, did 1 point of damage. And got another point of damage just in that first surprise round of hitting this thing while it's still in the wall just before running away. So now I'm saying that this kite strategy of continuing to run away and keep distance from it is running out, because she's back to the base of the tunnel where there is that improvised magic-created staircase. So, that's a dexterity plus exert skill check, basic difficulty of 6. Fortunately, she actually has okay dexterity and a +0 to exert, which is better than the default. And she succeeds at that. So she reaches the end of this tunnel while pursued by a giant praying mantis monster and comes to these pillars of stone she created and has to scramble back up these things to keep her distance away from this beast. It works well enough, and she's able to blast down to the thing using the Fray die and her last point of effort, flinging shards of stone at it, ripped up from the tunnel, and flung into this thing's face. And that's enough damage to kill the thing. The beast is toppling and dying even as it's climbing up after her. Shayl watches this thing, pokes it, and catches her breath, saying that's obviously not a natural beast. What was that thing sealed away for? After a minute, she huffs and climbs back down, coming back to that room that she'd broken open. And here, I'm not sure how to interpret that portal business. Is it literally a portal, or is it a doorway, or what? And I did say a shimmering portal, wasn't sure quite what I wanted to do with that. And I drew some more cards with various ideas on them, and I really got nothing out of that set. So I kind of threw those away and drew a new set. And this one led me to say, Shayl looks into this little room and sees this shredded, ruined workplace. There's a skeleton that's been scattered around the room, but it doesn't look like it was killed by the mantis thing. There's a sense of unreality to the room as though gravity isn't quite working. Most of the books and scrolls around here are decayed, along with most of the furniture, but there was a single scroll that has survived, as though it is special. Shayl carefully unrolls it, and it has unknown mystical symbols on it, something else that might have to be translated. She has no real explanation for this, so she takes the scroll and moves on for now. She continues along up the tunnel, finding an upward slope at last. And what's up there? I draw war machine fabrication or storage. And I'm saying this is a small military base, and it was connected to a supply area. So I'm reading this as a secondary small base containing a smithy and an entryway where supplies were brought in. Shayl reasons that the defenders, whatever they were defending from, lived on this side of the mountains, and they were bringing supplies in from this side to the side where her home city is now on. She looks outside from this little facility here and sees, and here I'm thinking about the scenery of Yellowstone that I just saw, so I made up a little custom table for terrain ideas. On that table, I've rolled a 5 for forest terrain. So Shayl's looking around in the forest, and by the way, what season is it? I was thinking summer, but I wanted to modify that with a bell curve number. On a 1 to 10 scale, I drew a 4, so okay, early summer. Shayl emerges from underground in a pine forest in warm weather and it's quiet. Looks like a nice place. She regrets that she's been told to wall the area off for now, but has a job to do, building a magically constructed hut so that she can honestly say that she lives here for a little while. Next, is there any sign of this other person who went this way? Has this person gotten this far? Here I'm doing a wisdom plus notice roll, and Shayl has no real skill at that. A +0 at wisdom and the default -1 for notice. And this person probably wasn't being especially stealthy, so I'll set a default difficulty roll of 6, and the actual roll was 11. So that's surprising. Shayl is actually finding something that was an obvious enough clue for even her to notice it. Okay, what kind of clue? I don't yet know who this other traveler is, or who sent him, other than that he killed several people. I'm rolling on some tables from the companion game, Stars Without Number, and I get he is somewhat frightened by the PC, and establishing or promoting some cultural institution, who wants to be brought an exotic piece of tech, in this case magic, has a power that involves knowing a great many corrupt politicians, don't we all? And as a detail, this person has unusually fast or slow speech. I was assuming some kind of wizard here, but even metaphorically taking that power about being well connected as opposed to having magical might suggests this is more of a social or rogue character. I'm drawing some cards for more inspiration here. And I got an interesting mix. I got phrases like ambush wondrous murder, inflict rare reputation, observe delicious companion. And I had icons showing Ouroboros, the snake, a monster, and a canteen, and something about a supernatural infection or curse and a skull. I happened to look up the icons that were on these cards. They're from that game icons site that a lot of people use these days. And the water bottle is described as a potion. That's kind of inspirational. I'm thinking this character is not a straightforward villain or sent by the rival court faction like I was thinking, but someone who is cursed and is out for his own goal of being cured. And that ties in with the idea of Shayl getting healing powers. So, still a murderer and a bad guy, I guess, but not pure evil. What's the nature of his curse? And what kind of clue does Shayl find by observing? Looking back at that phrase about observe delicious companion, along with the ambush murder thing, suggests this is a pretty standard Hollywood werewolf, although the fact the bodies weren't obviously eaten suggests that he restrains himself somewhat, so we could have kind of an anti-villain here. That could be interesting. I think what Shayl finds is a scrap of torn clothing with a bit of ragged fur on it. In this world, anyone affected with magic might have fur, and this piece isn't bloody. So Shayl's first thought is not, oh no, a buried guy, but a magic-using person got his clothes snagged on the shrub. Because she's worried about a hostile spellcaster, she looks around a little more before burning up her one spell slot for the day. She doesn't find any signs of trouble, so she picks a scenic spot within sight of the old ruins to fulfill that goal of building a little house. She strikes a cool pose and visualizes a stone structure. The spell is called Elemental Favor, and I'll put the rules for it up here. Since she is a professional mason with above average skill at that, she's good at using it for manipulating stone. If you want to read the spell exactly as written, you have to define a 10-foot cube and then move stone around within the cube. I'm fudging that a little bit because of her skill, so I'm figuring that she just makes a 10-foot cube worth of stone by pulling rock up from the ground, something like that. And she's got a little hut. We have the AI generated picture that looks fairly good for that. And now there is technically a house. Yay, quest complete. The rumbling of the ground as she casts the spell might attract attention, though. I gave it bad odds and then drew a card which said, no, it does not attract attention. So, what now? Shayl has been coached that really she's going to have to swear that she has moved into a house in this wilderness area and has spent at least one night there. And she can do that honestly in a single night. Sort of like a 19th century homesteader building a bare minimum cabin for the sake of claiming the land around it. It's still daylight, though. She spends a little while hanging around in this hut and studying that scroll that was found behind the wall. Can she learn anything about it? I'm setting a relatively high DC of 8, and she has a +1 in int and only a magic skill of 0. So her roll is 4 plus a 1. Yeah, that's not going to do it. She doesn't get a lot from it yet. Not surprising, since she's really not very good at magic yet. Magic is hard. Let's go scouting. I'm giving her a wisdom check with survive skill, and she has a 0 to wisdom and a -1 to survive by default. And her focus is going to be on actually not getting lost rather than finding anything. She gets a roll of 3 and 2, Total of 4, so that's pretty terrible. Not absolutely awful. I think she wimps out, not getting far before getting scared and heading back to the hut. She sits around eating rations and trying to keep a watch for this dangerous person who might be around. I'm going to make a roll for wilderness survival to see if anything happens in this area overnight. I get a 2, which says no event, and she's somewhat protected by the hut anyway, so she's able to get through the night without being attacked. What about this werewolf guy who's been prowling around? I'm going to draw a card for bad odds for the possibility that he does show up, and I get a no. Okay, well, for now, he's not around. He's going to be somebody who is foreshadowed and will show up later. In the morning, Shayl heads back into the ruins and begins to travel back through that tunnel. To fulfill the other part of her orders, she picks a spot in the tunnel and casts her stone shaping spell again, causing the stonework to flow and reshape itself into a fairly sturdy wall that she's kind of proud of. Does anything happen as she heads back through this dungeon area and back to the ranger who should be there waiting for her? I give that bad odds with a card draw, and I get no. Seemed to be uneventful that she headed back and found the guide that she traveled with originally and headed back to town. Rolling for travel trouble. First day, fine. First night, fine. Second day, fine. Second night, fine. Third day, fine. Third night, also fine. Okay, easy trip. Even so, I'm going to draw another random card for the little icon for inspiration, something she might see along the way. I get an icon showing vampire lips, and there's a sense prompt that says an animal carrying a message. I think the second one's more interesting here. I don't want to do vampires and werewolves. I'm thinking this is a tracking dog or similar. Is it that sorceress's dog that I mentioned earlier? Good odds, I say. And I draw. No. Okay. So what is it? My first reaction here was to dig out some more cards and generate something else random, but I kind of want to tie some of these plot threads together, so we got too much stuff flying around and not getting resolved. So, I'm saying that the person who sent this message, this apparently a dog with a message strapped to his leg or something, is the Hermit, Shayl's magic trainer, and he sent a letter saying, "Hey, come quickly, I know you're here." And for added conflict, I think he also says, "Don't go back to the royal court yet, talk to me first." Shayl decides that this is probably important, and she really has completed both parts of the job, and when she gets back, she's willing to swear to the fact that she has technically lived in this wilderness land. So she tells the wilderness guide to let the court people know that she's done the job, actually both jobs, and for that matter, has to pay him to basically hire 2 messengers to show up and tell 2 different people that she's done conflicting yet compatible jobs for both of them. And she tells this guy, have fun arranging that. I'm going to have to make her do a roll for that. Charisma +1, but she doesn't have the convince skill, so that's at -1. She gets a roll of 4. Wow. The guide tells her, look, I was hired to guide you through the wilderness, and I really don't want to get involved in the court politics. Shayl sighs and says, yeah, okay, I can't blame you. If anybody asks, tell them I did the job, and I'm going to be back real soon to confirm it and do whatever it is they need to do. And with that, they part ways. They're pretty close to the city, so Shayl's able to find the way out to the Hermit from here. At this point, I'm going to call the end of the second session. And this is plenty of adventuring, so I'm going to say that she has gained a level and gone up to level 2. Benefits of gaining a level. More hit points. As a heroic character, she has half the theoretical maximum for her level, which works out to 5 hit points, up from 3. Again, since she's heroic, those hit points mean a lot more than they would for other people. Attack bonus is still 0, terrible. Saving throws are all improved by 1. 3 skill points to spend. I kind of want to spend 1 on wilderness survival stuff, but she hasn't really justified that. I'm going to instead boost the dexterity stat by 1 due to a lot of traveling and athletic stuff recently. I happen to have a dexterity stat for her that is 1 below the threshold for getting an actual bonus to rolls, so I'm going to raise it to now get a +1 to dexterity. I spend the other 2 skill points on raising magic from 0 to 1, so she's now more confident, and also gets another point of effort for fueling abilities. As a level 2 elementalist, she gets a new art to spend that effort on. I'm going to pick Steps of Air, which is a very limited but very useful flight spell. Because she is an earth elementalist, I'm saying that this is more of an earth spell where she is conjuring small floating rocks so that she can run around in midair for a little while, just for flavor, really. She also learns one new spell of her choice. It can be either a elemental spell or one of the generic high magic spells. I'm going to pick, well, she already knows all of the level 1 elemental spells, so that leaves just the more arcane high magic spells. The best option on point for her is the one called the Wind of the Final Repose, which is what other people would call a sleep spell, except all these high magic spells have fancy names. She will call it Sleep of Stone, and make fun of anyone who calls it differently. Shayl is also due a new focus, which is either a decent car or a specialized ability that can customize a class more. These include things like being really good at one particular skill or great at melee combat, and the most relevant ones here are either artisan or specialist in crafting. I'm not sure which one is better for her. The specialist one is just plain rolling more dice and keeping the highest 2 out of 3, while artisan is more thematic, making you not just good at crafting, but saying that you're good at all types of crafting and especially at modifying equipment. As much as I'd like the bonus, I think I will go with the MacGyver route. I was looking at the crafting rules, and there is that idea that if it's in your line of work, you can pretty much make whatever you like, and the artisan ability is your excuse to say that everything is your line of work. This focus also comes with a boost to the crafting skill itself, which counts as 3 skill points when taken after character creation, which is enough to immediately raise her from skill 1 to 2. So that's the game. I raised her up to level 2, getting better at magic, and in terms of the story, this went from a straightforward dungeon crawl into getting caught up in a political dispute in the city, and starting to explore the wilderness beyond the dungeon. I'm not sure whether I'll narrate more of this, but it's been fun to go through and find little illustrations for it as I go along, while continuing to learn the rules and explore the setting as I make it up. I hope it's been fun to listen to. Thanks for tagging along.